I believe it is our personal responsibility to become the best we can be and all we can be, to give life some sort of meaning. Don't be a victim. F that. There's a beautiful saying, if you want to walk on water, first you got to step out of the boat. If you truly want it, you are not going to have balance in your life. You need to sacrifice. Could you live the life that you have for eternity? This format, how did you manifest it?
Well, let's just start the podcast.
Yeah, let's go.
How did I manifest this format? I don't know. I try and put myself in the shoes of the listener and think about what would they want to know from you. So I take common themes of things that I'm reading on social media, things people are asking me that they're struggling with, and think, who could answer this in a different way? Okay. So hence why you're here today, because you've written a book called The Winning Mindset.
Yep.
And you can probably teach a lot of people how to have a winning mindset.
Oh, well, there we go. Let's endeavour to do the best then, no?
Game on. So if I step people back, how I come across you, I'm pretty sure I'm walking through the mall, I see the Whitcalls and I see this book and I see winning on it and my mind is attracted to winning. And I think, oh, that's good. There's a Kiwi book about winning. And I carried on. And then I got home, I was like, what are you doing, you dickhead? Go back and buy the book. So then Mum was staying and I said, Mum, I need you to go back to Whitcalls when you're going to the mall and there's a book and it's got winning on the cover. Go and buy it for me,
And a good-looking guy on the...
Yeah. Extremely good-looking dude.
Yeah.
And she comes back and goes, oh, I found the book. I think it's it, but I don't know. This guy's not very good looking. No, I'm only having you on.
I know where your mum lives. Yeah.
So I then start reading it. I'm like, man, this is really easy to read, and I'm digesting it. I'm like, okay, I get a lot of these principles. I've learned little things about them previously. And then I think I tag you in an Instagram. We share a little bit of chat.
Yeah.
You invite me to a breakfast of champions, which we explain on a Friday. You sit down with people that you want to spend time with. So you don't work on a Friday, do you?
I don't work Fridays. No, I design my life.
And we'll come to that. So but I guess you kind of do, because on those Fridays you catch up with people that you want to, and it's almost like you're working on partnerships.
So here's the thing is, for me, I'm a very extroverted person, but I'm not high on that spectrum. So I like a bit of time by myself, but I also I can get bored with people very quickly. So I like to have engaging conversations. I don't want to waste my time.
Yeah, nice. So that's
you know what I mean? So that way I get to control how my days, spent.
So Fridays you have breakfast with interesting people to keep your life interesting. Nice.
Yeah.
And then I come up with an idea. I think, well, why don't we do some training for business owners to get some of these skills into their life? We do a workshop together. It's an absolute success. I think we end up having 145 people sign up. Yeah, it
was quite amazing. And the feedback was fantastic, eh?
Yeah, so $14,500 worth of ticketing prices to come and listen, and epic feedback. So I guess that's the journey of our relationship. And then I thought, well, why don't we sit down and try and go through some of these principles that are in the book, but also then try and tie them to some of the financial concepts that people have in their life as well. But maybe before we dive into that, what is it that you do like week in, week out, and that you help people with?
Okay, so fundamentally what I do is I help people become the best versions of themselves. So that's about looking at what their goals are, what their vision is, looking at what their limiting beliefs are, what are some of the things that are getting in the way, and someone who's not associated in the sense that I'm not part of the family. I can be critical without any bias, so to speak. So, I think every single person that I work with, I have to work with at an individual level, because everyone's different with what they want to achieve. Some people want to go to the Olympics. Some people just want to overcome some anxiety for performance or public speaking or whatever. So it varies.
Yeah, and you are, from what I know, working with athletes like previously Lydia Ko, Israel Adesanya. You're working with multi-millionaires, elite people, sports teams. Moana Pacifica, which you've done a great job with, and I've pissed you off and brought in my Chiefs.
No, that's right. I spat on it earlier, so... But I was a Chiefs fan because, I'm a counties boy. Yeah. So I was brought up. So naturally you go from counties into the Chiefs.
Now, your upbringing, where did you come from?
So I'm a Papakura, South Auckland boy.
Yeah.
Born in Papakura. early years in Takanini, then into Papakura, and from there into Hunua.
Yeah.
Mum and Dad brought a little place up there. From there, I went to, at the age of 13, to boarding school at Wesley College. And then from there, pretty much that was it. I never went back home. I went home for a little bit, but moved out and then spent my early teen years in Clendon, Manurewa.
Okay.
Yeah. A bit of a rough area, mate, but I loved it. I loved living there. Yeah.
And when did you get into the gym?
I would have been about 15. I remember my first train was at Wesley College. And the reason for that was because of the bullying. And so I had enough. And so I knew the only way to deal with that is to be as strong as I possibly could.
Yeah.
We're okay with occasional swear word and that. Okay, I'm just going to be keeping it real. Right?
Yeah.
So I'd had enough. So I knew that the only way, don't be a victim. That I hate victim mentality. So I took action. And I became obsessed with it. From there, got into rowing and rugby, which helped develop the muscular process. But it was actually at a training for Counties Colts when I was training with the senior boys in the gym area. These guys would have been 10 years older than me. And I'm like, I'm moving tin with guys older than me, been around longer than me. And I thought, rugby, I love this. I love this training. From there, I met some amazing people. Got into Strongman and Highland Games, and then that was the journey. Yeah.
Do you want to flex those biceps for us, mate?
No.
Come on.
Well, we were talking before, weren't we? What? What's that? 51 centimetres.
Jeepers. And what can a man like you bench?
Well, my best bench, so the best bench, I've done 5 plates, but that was in my 20s.
Wow.
But we weren't powerlifting then. So in the official numbers, when I was almost 50, I benched 182.5 kgs.
100 and what? 92?
182.5 kgs. So I think at that point now, I'm probably, I've been GPC champion for the last, I've retired now, but for about 7 years, that title, and I'm still ranked on open powerlifting for the push-pull age group and weight class. I think I've moved now. I was 9th, but I've moved to about 13th now on whatever formula they use.
And so then how does a boy from Manurewa, that area, Papakura, etc., end up going on to then get into this world of high performance?
Okay, well, obviously through being a competitive, I knew that the important thing was the mindset. I believe it's all mindset in the day of competition. Others will argue with that, but I think fundamentally at the end of the day, if you haven't got the right mindset, you haven't got anything. I went and researched what the Russians were doing. They were doing a lot of hypnosis. From hypnosis, I backed into NLP. So I actually, there was a couple of guys in the early 90s that got certified, but I got certified, at the end in the mid 90s into neurolinguistics, and then from there into a multitude of other courses. I've done a multitude of read hundreds of books, done a lot of courses in life coaching, right through to even today. I'm just finishing my degree in philosophy and psychology.
Yeah, nice. And are you dyslexic, is that right?
Yeah.
But
so
it must be a challenge.
So, well, you got to appreciate it. When I was at school, I was told I was sick because we didn't know what dyslexia was. I mean, the most incredible moment for me was when I failed. I looked, because I wanted to get I went in straight out of school into printing, right? I've never had a holiday more than like 3 weeks, right? So I go and I'm trying to get out of printing, so I go into the police force. I pass the physical, and then it comes to the writing test, And the lady, you're right, like a 7-year-old, you know what I mean? And she said, look, I want to run a few tests. And then she said, you know, you're dyslexic. Oh, what the does that mean? So for me, it opened a world where I don't like labels. I don't like to be labeled as dyslexic, but I do like the idea of knowing that I need to be creative in the way that I learn. So I learnt how to learn when I was about 21.
All right. Yeah. It would have been handy to know that at 13.
It would have been nice if I got that at fucking 7.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? But yeah, I learned to learn. And it opened a world for me. And for me, it just stimulated a sense of curiosity.
Yeah. Nice.
Oh, and it's never ended since then.
So how does one then write a book if you're dyslexic or labelled or
a great ghostwriter?
Nice. Yeah. And so they help you put it.
Nick McCloy, right?
Okay.
Now, anyone's looking at writing a book, contact this lady.
Yeah.
She knew I was apprehensive about it, and it was Nick who said, "Look, Dave, we're going to write this, but I think the important thing is it's not just the message within what you're saying, but what's really important is that we maintain your voice throughout the book."
Mm.
The book is not overly complicated.
No.
In fact, I had someone say to me, "Oh, yeah, I've read your book, Dave. It's very simplistic."
That's the point.
And I went, "That's the point. I'm not an academic, man. I don't want to write to appease some professor and have most of the population go, what the does that mean?" So it's simple.
Yeah. I've got gold writing through here with like action, vision board, more visualization, more affirmation.
Yeah.
This has become my training guide effectively.
Yeah.
5 versus 95, like thinking about orbit, above the line, below the line, how many of your thoughts. But you've got diagrams and whatnot for those watching at home, you'll be able to see. But yeah, you know, you've put it in a way where what I like about it is that when I open a book and it's like there's 6,400 words on each page, I'm like, oh man, my undiagnosed brain I can't deal with that, and I just won't even buy it. But this, I'm like, man, I think I read it in 48 hours. Like I really started to devour it, and
because it took me 2.5 years to write it. Thanks, pal.
Well, I'm sorry, but you've done a good job. If it's obviously that easily to read, but I love the victim story in there. Yeah, let's get into some of sort of what we're seeing in New Zealand at the moment, right? Mm-hmm. So. Because you've been doing this for some time, right? And I dug out an old video with you talking to Mike Hosking 10 years ago, talking to Lydia Ko, and gee, you didn't swear on that one, and you had a shirt on, and
that was because it was on TV.
Yeah, fair enough.
And this is a podcast, so we fuck the rules, Yeah,
100%. You make the rules here. So, what do you think? Like, where are we at in terms of people's confidence and self-belief? And just overall feeling in New Zealand at the moment, do you think, from what you see out there? Because you work with high-performance people, but then also I'm sure you're keeping an eye on like how people are thinking.
Look, actually, no. And what I mean by that is in my book, there's something that I write, which is protect yourself at all times. So I am very selective in what I allow in as far as information. Because if, and again, we all have an inbuilt bias, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'll let my position be quite clear that I'm not a fan of this woke culture. With that being said, I think you can become very overwhelmed with a lot of negative information, which can affect your whole energy and mindset. So I think, you've got to appreciate in my world on the spectrum, let's just say if we look at psychiatry at the extreme, so that a psychiatrist can medicate all the way up through psychology, all the way up into high performance. High performance is a tiny little part of the whole spectrum. Mm. It's a fine little part. And that's where I spend most of my time. So my perspective isn't more from a sociological sense. I'm very specific and very specialized. So that to a certain point, I'm aware of the fact that I'm not overly
in the weeds.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm not in the front lines. I'm not in. I mean, I'm not in like hospitals and nurses and doctors working 16-hour bloody shifts and seeing this. So I'm probably slightly disassociated from all that, and I think it would be unethical to sort of comment on that because I don't think I'm justified with the knowledge to be able to make any sort of claim.
Getting in the KiwiSaver fund that suits you and your situation is key to making sure you're maximizing your investment. Generate are an award-winning KiwiSaver provider with a track record of long-term performance, and they can help you do exactly this. Their advisors can meet with you to talk about all your options when it comes to KiwiSaver to help you decide what's best for you. Too many people never get KiwiSaver advice, but not you. Go to generatekiwisaver.co.nz/change to book a no-obligation chat with a Generate advisor. A copy of the product disclosure statement is available at generatekiwisaver.co.nz. The issuer of the scheme is Generate Investment Management Limited, and of course, past performance does not guarantee future returns.
Okay, so a lot of people probably don't identify as a high performer.
Yeah.
However, and so then they would tune out and go, well, like, I'm not a high performer.
Yeah, so why should I listen to this guy?
Yeah, or me, or this podcast or whatever, right? So,
yeah.
But what about some of the basics that you think, if all Kiwi people knew these things, their lives, they may be able to get closer to their potential?
I totally agree. And I think this is why I went and delved and explored into the philosophy. And in an existentialist sense, right? So what I believe, and maybe this can help shed some light. I believe that we're thrown into this world. We don't get to choose our circumstances, our parents, our place of birth, etc., and we die. Now, I'll leave the spiritual part to someone else, but I believe we have a finite amount of time on this planet. I believe that it is our personal responsibility to become the best we can be and all we can be, to give life some sort of meaning. Do you know what I mean? And think about this. I mean, Albert Camus wrote a book, The Myth of Sisyphus, who was deemed by the gods to roll a boulder up a hill and let it roll down again and then continue that for eternity. And so he had to find meaning in the suffering. And I think for a lot of people is that we just exist. And so for me, Carl Jung said, an examined life is a life lived. So for me, I see, and I write in the book, I believe that each individual, because I think, again, we can hide into this collectivist sort of thinking. But I believe each individual has a responsibility to become the best they can be and all they can be. Now, I believe if everyone had that attitude, this world will be a better place. You are the most incredible project you'll ever work on. And so what it does is that it has a ripple effect, I believe, on your family and your community because you become an agent of change. You know, when you see the positives in life, when you have a sense of purpose to life, what it does is that it inspires people around you. At the same time, though, you will have to deal with negativity. And that, like I said, it goes all the way back to protect yourself at all times. You got two types of people. In the book it says contributors or contaminators. Either they contribute or they can contaminate. If they contaminate, get rid of them.
How does one get rid of them? Simple.
Stop communication.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, when I work with my clients, one of the first questions I ask is, do you give me permission to be blunt and honest? I will not around. I'm not here to be your best friend. I'm here to help you become the best version of yourself. Now, if you want me to be your friend, go and see a counselor. No disrespect to counsellors, right? But I'm about being as hard on you as I feel or deem to be appropriate to push you to the limit mentally to then realize and sometimes unlock something that can lead you to a whole different world.
So if we touch on a couple of things in there, there'll be a lot of people that just get turned off by personal responsibility straight away because it's been hijacked by a type of political thinking, right? So people then be like, But why do you think why is it such a small percentage of people that actually want to take responsibility and lean into suffering and understand something like that instead of saying, like, oh, my life is really tough and I've had these things happen to me? They go, but there's stories everywhere, that same problems, but someone's gone down a completely different path.
Absolutely.
The best thing that happened to me.
And we're asking the wrong question here. Why? Well, I would say, look, I don't give a if you want to suffer in your suffering, off and suffer. I'm not going to. Why even have the conversation? I will attract to me. I want people to come to me and going, I need help. I want to make a difference. I want to be better. Let's go.
Well, you're certainly attracting many of those people. So how's a good way for somebody to reshape some of that suffering or whatever their victim story, etc., that they might be holding on to? What's a simple tip?
Well, simple. You cannot change anything you don't first acknowledge. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs is self-actualization, right? And again, sometimes, as I said to you, what's the first thing I say to my clients? Do you give me permission to be blunt and honest? Now, it doesn't mean to say that immediately in the first session I start attacking you going, fuck! But you don't know when something comes out of your mouth and I'll stop and I will interrupt you. Now, people say, good coaching's about listening. Well, I'm not going to sit here for a hour listen to you. I will interrupt it. And again, we all have different styles. I'm not everyone's cup of tea. I get it. But I have 30 years of history of results. So don't tell me your victim story.
Nice.
So it's like a CD, right? So if you and I are driving to Wellington, my car, I get to choose the music. And let's just say it's opera. You're going, oh, for fuck, kill me now, right? That's what people do. And because they're not conscious of it, they keep playing the same story. So what I want to do is interrupt. It's like scratching that CD. How old am I? Scratch the CD and lay down some new tracks.
Yeah.
Tracks that are built on belief, that are congruent with what you've identified that you want. So you always got to start with the end in mind. People, this is where I get pissed off. People go to me, "Oh, you're dreaming."
I hope so.
Hey, that's a sure sign. Your son's a dreamer. Brilliant. Put that down on paper. Show me that dream. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. How does that get taken out of us? Like, why does society do that to us? Because when we are younger, we're allowed to dream. We're allowed to be an astronaut. We're allowed to, we're allowed to be a fire
limitless,
person. Yeah. And I think, something that I heard you say in that interview from 10 years ago, which I think is still a gold nugget, is we're only limited by imagination.
Yeah,
now, when we're younger, it's like you have to be creative. You have to have imagination.
We conform over time, mate. So here's the thing. Think about what Nietzsche said. There were 3 phases we have to go through. And again, I'm a real fan of Nietzsche, right? And so society was represented by the dragon. And each one of those scales on the dragon is thou shalt, right? All the rules. And so most of us become camels and we carry the heavy load and we say yes to the dragon, thou shalt, right? Now, in order to make the ultimate transition, which is kind of part of the reason why I talked about the Ubermensch or the alter ego, you have to become the lion. That lion says no to the dragon, has the courage to go on its own path, right? To find its own meaning. Not to conform you go back to my time. In my day, it was you go to school, and if you were smart, you went to university. If you weren't, you got an apprenticeship and got a job, right? And so we've conformed to that. So the lion says, no, you. I'm going to create my own values and my own vision for life, right? And that's a very important transition. It's probably the most important, because what it does eventually lead to is full circle to the child. The third in that was to be the child. A child is limitless, has imagination, sees the best in everything. I mean, you see children, of different races, holding hands, playing together, being imaginative. And over time, like I said, society.
Yeah.
So so Nietzsche's talked about the most important thing is the constant reoccurrence. Ask yourself, could you live the life that you have for eternity?
Oh, that's good. Could you live the current life that you have for eternity?
Would that fulfill you?
Mm.
And if you can say yes to that, then you're on the right track.
Yeah,
most of us will probably go, no.
Yeah.
No.
So you talk about having the end in mind, right, which makes a lot of sense. But what I seem to see out there with business owners and with people is like they don't know what they want. So then they don't go on a journey at all. Mm-hmm. But so many people that you work with probably do know what they want. It might be the championship. It might be the Olympic gold or whatnot.
Yeah, totally.
How do we encourage people? Because I guess there's two parts to this question. Is it that we don't actually know where we need to be going, so let's just get directionally correct?
Well, maybe you start with what do you know that you don't want?
Nice.
All right, here's the thing. The quality of your life is directly related to the quality of the questions you ask of yourself and qualified others.
So if you're asking yourself shit questions, you're going to get shit out.
Fuck, I hate this job. I hate this job. Is that so? If you're running that pattern, where's the solution? I hate this job, and then you continue to clock in doing the same job. Now we've got to be realistic. I'm not saying be reckless here and just tell the boss to f off and then put yourself in deep financial because you've got no income.
Yeah.
But what I am saying is that you've also got to have a bit of courage. There's a beautiful saying, if you want to walk on water, first you got to step out of the boat. I jumped, right? So for me, maybe I like to think I'm probably a prime example, right? Because I think I am relatable to the average guy out there and female, right? Am I an academic? Am I smart? No. I mean, I remember School C England. It's ironic because I'm dyslexic. So even today, I still, when I write psychology, the spell check comes up and goes, no, right? I'm still got to learn to write, right? I'm still working my way through it. Thank you, Grammarly. So what was I saying? Fuck, so here I am because I am that camel. The old man goes, you got to get a job, let's do an apprenticeship and I'll get an apprenticeship. So here I am in printing. Now, I was miserable. I hated it. But here's the thing. I didn't exactly know what I wanted, but I knew what I didn't want. Now, for me, I tipped that initially into the gym. So where initially are your interests? What are the things that you love? I mean, I was obsessed with the gym, right? It was through the gym that led me to what I'm doing today. So follow your passions. I mean, look, I've got you might have a passion for writing books or art or whatever. Here's another example. This is 30 years ago. I'm in line as a printer. And at this point, no, sorry, I'm print sales. It was part of my transfer. So I'll go back. Printing. I knew I had to get off shift work, right? Overalls and steel cap boots. Managed to get a job as a sales rep for a print company. That meant 9 to 5. I'm working, and I'm not doing shift work because I used to clock in at 3:00 in the afternoon. If it was a double shift, I'd finish 6 in the morning. You know, I mean, the circadian system goes, we're tapping out. This we don't know where we're at, right?
Yeah.
So I'm a zombie for time and a half, which equivalated to something like $14 an hour. Off. You're never going to achieve what you want. That's insanity, right? So in order to walk on water, you got to step out of that. I went into a job interview with a guy that was looking for a sales rep for the print, which was a sister company. So I walk in after shift, stinking of alcohol, alcohol for the printing press. Not that I'm, and I'm still cat boots and overalls, and I sit in his chair, and you got bloody ankle over it, and he goes, I'll give you a chance. I pleaded my case. I said, I'm telling you, I can do this. Now, at this stage, you got to appreciate, I'm starting to learn all this stuff, right? So I thought, what better way? If I get off shift, then I can start working at night and the weekends. Something else that's really important here, if you truly want it, you have to appreciate that you are not going to have balance in your life. You need to sacrifice. You need to work your off, right? So here I am. He gave me the chance. At night, on weekends, I'm building my coaching business. So I would say, people go, well, can I see you on Tuesday morning at 10? I'm sorry, I've got commercial clients. I actually got a job, but they weren't to know, right?
Yeah.
But I'd come home, my wife would have dinner for me, have a shower, change your clothes, and I'd be out there at night. It was for 3 years it took me to build that.
Nice.
To get to a point where I said, F you to the job. And I started my own. So it is going to be hard. Well, you think about your journey in building your business. You have to do a lot of sweat equity for no return for the first couple of years, in building it. But what drives the behavior for me was also based on my values.
Yeah.
My number one value was freedom. I designed my life.
Nice.
And here I am for 30 years. I've worked fundamentally 4 days, Monday to Thursday. Of that, if you added it up, it's 2 days a week.
Epic.
Yeah, it's brilliant, mate.
So your end is effectively freedom, and then you've got to design it and build towards that. But you've got to then be able to unpack what freedom means to you, right? And you can probably tell.
By definition, right?
Yeah.
And I think what it meant for me was I'm staunchly independent guy, right? I'm not a conformist. And yes, I'm a team player, but, you know, why do I specialize with individuals? Because I can relate. Yeah, I can still work with teams, but I like to work with the individuals within those teams as well as the collective.
Yeah.
So where the f*** was I going with that?
Freedom and what that means to you.
So for me, when you spend all your life, Wesley College, everything is dictated to you. What time you get up, what time you shower, what time you eat. At work, the thing that pissed me off about life, and here's a beautiful little thing, is that 99% of the population, I will guarantee you, that are working a 9-to-5 job fundamentally, are probably awoken to an alarm clock. I wake up when I wake up.
Because you've designed your life.
Bro,
yeah.
I have never had to use it still sits on my desk. It is, I think it's like 35 years old.
Yeah.
Right. I tell you, I brought it off a guy called Phil Cook, who had a little side hustle when he was one of the printers at Conforming. I brought it off him, and it still sits on my desk. It's my last little memory
reminder
of my printing days.
Yeah.
And what a great off, eh? Never have to set the alarm on it.
I'll tell you a story that I think kind of parallels this, where, because I think a lot of people look at material things or chapters or
goals and sort of go like, that's what I'm aiming for, and I need to tick those things off, and then they do whatever they've got to do to achieve the goal. Right now, during COVID, I would go and run the domain, upper domain, lower domain drive. I don't know if you've ever been up there by the tennis arena.
Well, I certainly have run that.
So I would go and sprint that 3 times. See if I could blow myself up.
Yeah.
But at the bottom, when during COVID, obviously the tennis arena was shut down and whatnot. Yep. I jumped the fence and I sat in there. And
I know the owners of that place, so yeah.
So I sat there and I thought, I'm going to fill this up one day and I'm going to be in the arena.
Yeah.
And people are going to come watch me perform.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't mean I'm going to play tennis there, but I just sat there imagining, I think I have the ability to do that. Now, this is 2020 or 2021. Like this journey is just starting. You know, people listening now, they wouldn't have even known that this is a thing.
But it's manifested with a thought, isn't it?
Yeah, and so I think, okay, I believe that I can make that happen. And then today I was in the gym because I'm starting to think about doing an event, a live event for this year. We did one last year, so I've effectively achieved what the aim was, right? But then I'm like, okay, we'll go a bit bigger this year. What are we going to use for a venue? So I was searching that yesterday. And then all of a sudden in the gym this morning, I was like, I wonder if I could hire that out and just do that out of principle. That's what I was thinking about in 2020, 2021 and do it. I don't know if that's even possible, but I know now that I can achieve that. But I have to have belief. I have to know, like, that's what I am aiming for, and it comes back to impact and being able to help people and do things that are enjoyable for me. But only really I can go on that journey to see, is this enjoyable to me?
Yeah.
And there's things that I've done along the way where I go, that's not anymore.
But that's how you learn.
Exactly, yeah. And I think people don't want to go on the path because they are scared either how long it's going to take or, like, what if it's not the thing?
They lack courage and conviction.
Yes, conviction is a word I had written down here that I'm keen to understand more about.
Yeah.
Where does conviction come from? Because people can't take courage or action without.
Well, so when you have, think about the power of this. Let's go back to something that I think is rather ugly but beautiful as well in the same sense. But in the Vietnam War, there was a demonstration and there was a monk, a Buddhist monk, who set fire to himself because he had absolute conviction to his faith and to seeing that the war comes to an end. Conviction runs deep. Do you know what I mean? And I think what that trying to not sort of simplify this, but it's almost when your intentions and our intentions align, that's where conviction is created in the sense of the behavior. Remember, bottom line is we behave our way to happiness, right?
And success, yeah.
Yeah, we behave our way to success. So, I think what it is that you also have to build a certain resilience. I remember when I was approached by one of the managers the boss at Comprint, and he said, "What's this about you doing this mental stuff, mate? You only just managed to pass your apprenticeship." Now, this is what you got to appreciate is that he has historical data that he can present as evidence, which is very convincing. I had a dream that was somewhere out there in the alpha, you know what I mean? So how do I counter with that? Well, you have to understand that conviction is the timeline to completion. So when you have a conviction, it helps you hold you on track. And then when that's manifested, and believe me, that was a great day when I had the opportunity to counter, which was 10 years later at Gulf Harbour, where the individual appeared. And I had the evidence because I'm sitting with the current New Zealand Open champion, Lydia Ko, Cecilia, and a couple of other professional golfers. Me. So that time That is why you have to have that vision and that conviction and the discipline to stand fast, even though everything may be stacked together. People go, "Oh, you idiot. What about your family? What about your responsibilities to look after your family? So what am I going to teach my kids? To conform, to suffer for the rest? Is that the purpose of life? That I want my kids out there being entrepreneurial, investigating, making mistakes, learning from it, but ideally creating a life that they wake up and feel happy in doing."
So when we conform, I guess we can conform in a pretty generalized direction that probably should work. So there's so much data that that's actually what to do. And the people who don't conform normally become the crazy ones, right?
Yeah, they're the outliers. Yeah.
But it's not just about doing, starting a business or maybe being an Olympian or whatnot. But we all must have deep down some form of understanding that we're not getting closer to where it is that we want to get to.
Well, that's where you get help.
Yeah.
I think what I also talked about is awe, right? So ownership, responsibility, but accountability. And again, remember when I said to you the quality of your life is measured by the quality of the questions you ask of yourself and other qualified individuals. Not your fucking mate.
Yeah.
Who, let's just say, he's got no goals. I mean, are you going to listen to them? You need to find those mentors, those coaches, those people you want to model, those high achievers. How do they talk? How do they behave? What is their life like? Now, there's multiple ways of, because there's no perfect recipe. But if you were to extract a couple of those things and start applying it, it would certainly help put you on the right track.
So let's go back to the victim story, which probably holds a lot of people back. Again, there's a good exercise in the book. But what are some common financial victim stories that you see out there from a financial side? And then on the other side, just general kind of.
Like I can relate to this, mate, because I can tell you. I had someone else telling me my value. I was probably the worst paid printer when I was there, but admittedly, I wasn't the best printer, so made common sense, And I get it. I think I truly believe that capitalism is the greatest thing ever invented until we find something better.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So I get that. But for me is when I got to value what I thought was, and believe me, I would say that I'm certainly not cheap, but I think what I bring in value is, again, there's cost and value. Here's an example, because a lot of people will say, it's a big investment. Well, I think it's probably the most important investment is into yourself. You are your business. So I think every entrepreneur, every business owner should have a proportionate amount of investment into their own personal development. And that can be a variation of different things, but I do think it's important. And then, in valuing yourself, for me, that's what really started creating a sense of freedom for me. I didn't want to work. I did a decade of 16-hour days. Fuck that. I don't want to do that anymore. But I knew that in order to do that, I needed to be able to eventually get myself to that rate in such a way that I can create the lifestyle that I want. I think the other thing for me, though, is that a lot of people, they like the home, the watch, the car. For me, the most important resource is time. That's why I've designed, freedom for me is represented in the fact that Friday, Saturday and Sundays. Now, do I sit on the couch, sleep, bitch and moan, not do anything? Mate, that time is reading, research. I spend a lot of time reading because, that was something that was, I think, the gift of learning was opened up to me later in life when most people have finished the learning and have gone into the experience. I've gone through the experience and now I'm learning. I'm doing it backwards, But I just, my wife will tell you, 6 o'clock in the morning, she might still be in bed. I'm watching lectures. Yeah. I'm writing notes. I fuck. So my time's taken up. Do I block? Oh, look, mate, after training, so today is league day. So I'll go to the gym. I'll train hard. I'll come home. I'll eat. I'll shower. I'll put on a lecture, and sure enough, within 5 minutes, I'll be asleep on the couch, my lazy boy. I'll have a little snooze because that's what I like to do.
Good man. Well, thank you for giving us some of your time
you're welcome.
On this Friday. I'll just click my thought. I was going to ask something about victims. I think I could see this when I worked in a distribution centre where you had a set time to do the job, and you would wear a headset and you would listen to it, and then at the end of it, it would tell you whether you've done it in the allocated time. Now, you were supposed to travel at around 100%, right? But then there would be guys that would be rolling at 120, then you might back off in the last half of the day, but that'd still sort of be up your ass, being like, we can see what you're doing.
Yeah.
You're going hard, then you're pissing around in the Arvo. We want you to keep going hard. And then there'd be people that are rolling at 60 to 80%, but they're not there. But what ends up happening is people start going, well, why should I go at 120 when I get paid the same as the person going at 60 or 80? And I think the point being, that's a very valid and fair way to think. But if the system isn't going to change, you're in the wrong place. So the victim story or the CD track can be, they don't care about us. They don't reward high performers. Why even go above and beyond? And that CD probably does suit that environment. But if that's not the life that you want.
Yes. It's based on requirement in the environment you're in. I mean, put it this way. If you're in the Navy, do you think it's probably a good idea that you can swim?
Yeah. I'd say so.
For sake. Look, if anything, remember when I said, sometimes the biggest gift is the pain. I mean, look, people, fundamentally, everyone wants happiness in life, right? So how do we...
Well, why are so many people unhappy then?
First and foremost, here's the thing. In order to appreciate happiness, don't you have to have the opposite? Because you've got to have a frame of reference.
True.
Right? So, and then you go back and you go, well, why are people so unhappy? Because they've conditioned themselves to suffer in such a way that they've just accepted it. They've become a camel. They will carry the heavy loads for the rest of their life.
Sad way to be.
It's conditioning, man. I mean, this is why you've got to give yourself an uppercut, wake the up and ask yourself a better question. I've talked about this. This is a very, very important thing because we talk about significant moments. And I've talked about this before with a wonderful man, Joe, that I worked with, who was probably 60-year-old. He was a beautiful cook on a man. He was head machinist on the little M110 press. And I was his number 2. And I remember one day the boss came around and said, hey, look, we need you to work this weekend. And Joe went, yes, because Joe was a yes man. He said yes to the dragon. Now, management fucked off. We're back working again. We finished the job and washing down, and Joe off around into the reels. And I walked out and there's Joe, and I could see he's upset. I'm going, Joe, what's wrong, man? And he goes, it was my granddaughter's birthday this weekend. It was her, we're having the birthday at our place and I have to work. And I was like, no, you don't. You don't have to We go to your, what the, but Joe was conditioned. He was worried about losing his, oh my God, living life like that. That was for me a significant moment when I went, this. Now, I get it, right? Now, I still understand that there's laws. Whether I like it or not, you and I have to pay tax, right? And I pay my accountant good money to minimize it.
Still plenty to pay.
Still plenty to pay, mate. Right? So I get that. But if I'm going to go through life existing. So someone said to me, if I died today, I'm like, yeah, all good.
Yeah.
No regrets. Right?
There's the dyslexia. But because you've left projects and things, right, that can help people.
Yeah,
I have the same thought. I don't like thinking about it because I don't want to attract it.
Yeah.
But I sort of think, okay, I'd be pretty content. But I know I'd be gutted because I've still got a lot to do and to give.
Fuck yeah. Look, here's the thing. One thing you got to appreciate when you go on this journey is that time's limited. Hence the urgency to be mindful of what the fuck are you doing today. People, what I hate is incongruent that moan and do nothing about it. I mean, Jim Rohn talked about this. 3 steps to greatness. Number 1, set goals. Number 2, educate yourself. And 3, have a financial plan. This is where you could answer number 3 for us all, right? But number 1 and number 2, I think I can take care of. First and foremost, number 1, set some goals. 2, educate yourself. The biggest contributing factor to my hourly rate, and just think about this, the most I've earned in an hour is 10 grand for an hour's work. Going all the way back when I was printing, when I first started my apprenticeship, I think I was on $1.20 an hour.
Jeepers.
So what's that in a percentage increase?
Oh, my calculator's not working here and my brain's not fast enough. Well, effectively 1,000 extra.
Crap accountant. What is it? Gap, GTP, whatever you fucking call it. Get them to fucking do it for you. But, what it is, someone, think about this. And I'm not doing it to blow my own trumpet because, you've got to appreciate I am not a smart man in the sense that when you look at where I left school, where I lived in Clendon, we struggled to put petrol in the car. I mean, a crate of beer was a treat on a Friday night with some fish and chips with the boys, A pair of boots for playing rugby? I couldn't afford new boots. I'd be second-hand pair.
And so you completely blow your paradigm to make 10 grand in an hour, right? But you would have believed that you could do it at some stage, and you had to trust yourself.
The belief initially is built, though. Remember, a belief by definition is something I hope is true. And so you build a conviction to the belief over time because by taking action, you start to find evidence that supports the belief. But in order to build the belief, you've got to take the action. People just want it to
happen.
But, yeah. Are you serious? It's delusional. Do your time under tension.
Do you think, just on that, I was going to ask this before, but part of what makes this stuff easier for you is that you've done so much work in the gym and then the people you bump into, because you learn a lot of good principles in the gym around delayed gratification, not pushing it too far, what does your body actually allow you to do before it pushes back, things take time. You can train all you like, but if you go get on the piss and eat food and whatnot, so it's not congruent with it. You can sit there and go, I'm training hard, but then you're not incongruent and you're not actually doing it.
And how do you know you're training hard? I mean, seriously.
So accountability, yeah.
So, I think gym, in some sense, is a metaphor for that process, isn't it? Anything where, are there times when I really don't feel like going? Yeah. My body's sore, my body aches. That's the reason I'm going. It's habitual.
So congruence, because where I started to learn about this is that I would say it's hard to sell things. And then I would check myself and go, well, is it going to be hard to sell something if you believe that? And I've got a call in 10 minutes with a potential client.
Unconsciously, you'll communicate that. And, and the brain finds evidence to support the bias.
Yeah. So then the whole call, I'm looking at why it's hard to
So here's the affirmation, right? Because again, sorry, mate, but I love this shit, right? So like you, I was in sales, right? So I came to the printing press, I'm in sales, and I'm learning this stuff, NLP. You should be taught in school, right? And I'm thinking, I'm 3 months into the job. I'd sold something like $12,000 worth of print. My budget's $750,000. I'm in deep here.
Yeah.
Because I'm smart enough to do the maths and knowing that I won't have the job at the end of the year if I fucking continue the way I am. And I'm still learning the ropes and building my business. And then I'm reading, I'm applying this because, again, go back to you cannot change anything you don't first acknowledge. That's why you got to be self-aware, right? So like you, I was asking the wrong question. I started changing it, mate, within 6 months in that job. Never done sales before. I signed off $1.2 million worth of print.
Shit.
I'm the man. And I'm going, now, if ever there was evidence to prove, fuck, that is it.
Yeah.
It actually was a blessing because what it did is that it afforded me, because of certain comment that was made to me. Should I tell the story there? You want to have another little metaphorical story?
Okay.
So I signed off $1.2 million worth of print. I was required to do 750, right? Double my budget fundamentally. And I heard nothing from management weeks later. Right? No, hey, well done. No, I thought I might get a couple of $100. Take your wife out for dinner. Good on you. Well done. Not a thing. So eventually I catch the boss. And I said, any chance we can have a quick chat? Now, you got to appreciate the boss was a little palangi dude. And here I am, I'm New Zealand's strongest man, 167 kgs, and I'm pissed off, right? I mean, you can imagine me in a shirt and tie trying to find. Anyway, so I go in there and I sit down and I said, hey, listen, blah, blah, blah. And I've doubled my sales, but I haven't heard anything from management. Thought you'd give me something, just some sort of recognition. And I remember him lying back in his chair going with a cigarette going, Dave, just be glad you got your job. Mate, I slammed that door. It came off the hinges. And you know what I did for the next 6 months? I put my cursor to out all day and I read so many books from the library because I've done my job.
Yeah.
I've done my. So I got paid to study.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not a conformist.
So the camel in that moment is just getting
Oh, mate, there is nothing more satisfying than to face the dragon because it's scary.
Yeah.
Face the dragon. All right, here's another little story that represents that. So, I'm sorry, I'm full of metaphors today. Okay, so the plains of Utah. I don't know, you probably heard it. I've told this before, but there's the buffalo and the cow on the plains. Now, you can see for fucking miles, and they can see when the storm's coming. And as the storm comes, the cow recognizes it, turns and runs away. The buffalo sees it coming, starts running towards it. Who spends more time in the storm?
The cow.
Correct. Don't be a cow.
Love it. Bloody beautiful. Congruence then is a good way to explain it. Congruence. Oh, here he is. I'm teaching me English now. Sit down. What is it? Is a good way, very simply, for us to think about it. What are we telling ourselves that doesn't actually serve us well? So I can't go around saying like I'm going to be a keynote speaker and get paid 10 grand if I'm then saying like, oh hey, I'll do it for free. I'm not actually very good at it.
I think there's got to be a level of self-awareness and a level of practicality too. Yeah. Right. I think we can get too black and white with it. Right now, it's in of itself, in the contents of what the requirement is, it's a transition in that context. However, even though I might do it for free because I know that I'm being congruent because I'm learning the ropes. It's how you frame it up, right? Now, if you continue to do it for free for the rest of your life and still not get paid for it in the sense that you're a business that should be making – because a business by definition makes profit, right?
Yes,
I'm sure that's what you teach, hey?
Yes.
Right? So if it's not making profit, it's not a business. So, yeah, I'm in the business of making money. Now, whilst I'm on that journey of learning, I have to be flexible with that because what is the important thing here? Is it to be charged or is it to get the experience, to get the ability to transition, to eventually get to that point?
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you think that, you're a deluded.
And I had to go through that journey with that example.
It's growth, right?
Yeah. Okay. Appreciate we might nearly be at the hour mark there. Take us through briefly the alter ego and how powerful that is, because I think that's something a lot of Kiwi wouldn't have learnt about before.
No, and I've got to say I'm really excited about this because I've been approached by Canterbury University, who are in the positive psychology department. Dwayne, who's the professor there, contacted me and said, look, I've read the book. I'm fascinated with this as well. So we're actually developing something for students eventually for those who want to get into the positive psychology side of things. So here's the thing. Let's go back to Nietzsche.
You love Nietzsche.
Love Nietzsche. I think he stole my last name, but he modified it. He had to get something a little extra in there. But here's the thing. We talk about the child. The child is limitless with their imagination, eh? They're fearless. I mean, how many of you, when you've got a 2-year-old, you fucking better keep an eye on because they have no idea. They will charge at anything. Oh, look, a bull. Ah, what the right? So the alter ego for me is based on a simple principle. When you are not feeling confident, how do I the responsibility of, say, stepping up to do a podcast or a seminar, I'm still required to do. But I'm feeling this. What the can I do, right? So I talk about disassociate and borrow resources based on a simple principle of act as if. So for me, when I'm powerlifting, so I use this for my powerlifting. In my office, I have bull. That bull represented me when I'm powerlifting. So, because here's the thing, I've got a 160 kg David Niethe or a 10,000 raging bull. Which would you want to face? You know, I'll still kick your ass, but the bull will kill you, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I wanted to be more than all my parts. Because when you do and act that way, what's the first thing you do when you put that on?
Change your physiology.
You change physiology. What do kids do? You give them a piece of wood. When we were kids and you're out with your mates and you had a piece of wood and you're playing war, I mean, my mates used to get pissed off, right? Because we all had superheroes and everyone would go, oh, what are you going to be? I'm going to be Bionic Man, so my arm's bionic. And we'd play, you know. And I'd just piss them off and I'd go, oh, I'm everything proof. So, you know, I won. So you can't beat me because I'm everything proof.
Yeah.
Off, Niethe. You can stop the rules, right? But when you become that alter ego, it improves the probability of going to a place of being absolutely fearless. When you're fearless, you're free. When you're free, that is when you become fluid. You get out of your own way. You know when you're in flow state, it's when you don't give a
I think I'm a lion. I still haven't worked it out.
But the thing is, at least you made the important transition. Like I said, the most important transition is to the lion.
Yeah.
This book will help you become that lion. The rest, the momentum from that will carry you to the child. And I'm probably still making my way through that part too.
Yeah. Powerful, mate. Powerful. So alter ego, it doesn't just need to be an animal. It can
be anything you want. Oh, look at Stylebender.
Yeah.
Kai France. Kai France becomes this Maori warrior. He's got his whole... You're not fighting Kai when you're in that ring. You've got tens of thousands of years of ancestry all focused through this one lad.
Why do you think it's so hard for people outside of sport to grasp this? Because even reflecting on it, when I went down to watch the Chiefs play last week, unfortunately they got tipped over by the Blues, but Anton Leonard-Brown wasn't playing, so defence is going to...
Another excuse, yeah.
They were even talking about, once you step over this line, you've got the history of the club and the fearless Taniwha and all this sort of stuff, and it's an old Māori past site. It's an amazing ground down there at, in Hamilton, right? It's got a lot of history. And they're telling the story of that to the crowd before, and I'm thinking, fuck, this is epic. But people, that just would have washed over people's heads like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool. Or might go get another 4 drinks now and carry on.
And again, this is where you tend to go back to asking what
people don't know.
Why waste our time trying to explain what?
Yeah,
Here's
gotcha.
It's those that do that will.
Yeah.
It's unfortunately you have to accept. As much as I would love everyone to become a lion, what is the reality?
Camel. Yeah.
95% rule, bro.
That's all we're chasing.
And that's unfortunately the facts. Just don't be one of that percentage.
Go for the 5.
Fuck, be yourself, be unique, be fearless.
Love
Have
it, mate.
some courage. Grow some big hairy balls.
3,500 copies of this book have sold. Are you going to do an audio version?
We've got a couple of things. I've yet to hear and talk to the publisher as to what we're doing. I believe that we will be looking at reprinting.
I believe that 99% of books never sell past 1,000 copies. So you're a 1% publisher.
I think it's actually less than that.
Yeah?
I think it's something like 300 to 500. Yeah.
So you're in the top 0.1% or top 0.5.
Yeah,
at least top 1%.
It's not like...
How does that make you feel?
I'm really proud of it, man.
Yeah.
I think it's, what you got to appreciate for me is, even though, I come across as a very confident person, and there are times when I there's an appropriate time to be humble, and I'm very humbled by the amount of feedback of people who have said to me, finally I read a book that I can understand and apply.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it's not written for academia.
No.
Maybe the biggest gift I ever had was being dyslexic.
Yeah. There we go.
Reframe everything to serve you, man.
So if people want to find it, The Winning Mindset, get down to Whitcool's maybe is where I got mine from. $34.99. I look at that, I'm like, that's a cheap investment.
It's cheap, man.
Like, I don't know you at this stage too, so I'm like, man, I can get him some of his knowledge for $35.
Yeah.
I'm like, you bloody beauty, let's go. Tax deductible inside a business too.
Absolutely.
So even cheaper.
Mate, even better.
But like what you do is, so I save 40 cents in tax because I'm in the top tax bracket, so then I don't have to pay tax of 40% because I lose $34.99 of profit. But this turns into 35 grand worth of revenue anyway, so I end up paying even more tax. So you're contributing to the tax take of the country as well.
Oh, well, so I'm contributing something back to society in some sense.
Yeah, big time. What haven't we touched on as we get out of here, mate? What's like one principle that we haven't mentioned in this hour that you think is fundamental for people to understand, or to give them a seed to go and explore this further?
Yeah, look, how about, one of the simplest things that I talk about in the book is dare to dream, right? So everyone should start sitting down with your friends and, with your family, or even by yourself. Ask yourself, if I couldn't fail, and then build a vision board.
Yeah.
And again, people go, it's a bit childish, isn't it?
Yeah.
What did I talk about, from the camel to the child?
See, on that, like even after reading the book, because I started working on a vision board a little while ago, right?
Yep.
Like years ago.
Well, you kind of got this now. It's manifested, isn't it?
Yeah. But I've got now it's like themes of types of people. So as in like The Rock, I'm like hardest worker. I learned something. You know, if you outwork other people.
Yeah, there's some important things here. Sorry to interrupt, but on that vision board is that it must be sensory specific to self.
Yeah.
So here's an example of someone taking that and getting it right. Lydia Ko was 8 when I said, you're going to create your vision board. So she brought it back, and all she had was Golf Digest magazine with Annika Sorensen holding the US Women's Open trophy. But Lydia chopped her head off. And there's Lydia head on this, holding that. Now what's beautiful is 8 years later, that was reality.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
So we finished with this. Any thought that I continuously hold in my mind will soon seek expression through some practical means.
Any thought that I continuously think in my mind.
That I continuously hold in my mind will soon seek expression through some practical means.
Now, for most people, they're probably holding negative shit thoughts that don't serve them well and therefore create the outcomes. So we need to scratch the CD, give ourselves some better thoughts, and then we'll have better outcomes. Simple as that.
It's not hard.
Ladies and gentlemen, David Niethe, an honour as always, mate. Thank you for the help you've given me, a couple of breakfasts and paying. I don't think I've even paid yet.
Nah, lucky you owe me a brekkie, mate.
I do. But I enjoy spending time with you, mate, and I'm sure people will get a lot out of this. They'll get even more if they rip through your book, if they can even find it, because I believe you might be sold out.
Yeah, we're getting pretty close to that, mate.
Good on you. We'll keep up the good work out there.
No, thanks for having me on, mate. I really appreciate it, eh?